Good morning, everyone. I'm Falguni Padode, Group Managing Editor at Construction World. Thank you so much to the panelists and the moderators for being here today. As silver partners for the prestigious CTBUH 2025 Asia Conference this December, we're thrilled to host this discussion. Construction World is India's largest circulated construction magazine, and we spent 29 years shaping the dialogue on infrastructure and the built environment. The magazine reaches 800 cities and a combined audience of 750,000 professionals across print and digital, contractors, developers, architects, consultants, and technology leaders. Mission has always been clear: to drive industry thought leadership and meaningful conversations, just like the one that we're going to be having today. All our events are in sync with industry needs. We have one in December on redevelopment in Mumbai, which is one of the hottest topics in real estate in Bombay today. We have a Metro Rail conference in January. This is a snapshot of all the events we are doing this year, all the way up to November of next year.
Falguni, we still have the cover slide. I don't know whether you have the cover slide. I want to change that.
You're still, is it, the slides are not moving?
No, they're not moving.
Is it visible?
Yeah, now it is.
We bring the spotlight on tall buildings today. Our panelists are Juzer Kothari, Lead Fellow, IGBC Fellow, Managing Director of Conserve Consultants. Sarfaraz, Momin, Founding Partner of Urban Designer, StudioPOD. Pushyamitra, Londhe, Associate Architect, Hafeez, Contractor. Rohit Uchil, Principal Consultant, Integrated Technical Services. Rajneesh Ramu, Managing Director, Lurch Bates India. And Jairam Panch, Chief Operating Officer, Turner International. Our moderator is Naushad Panjwani, Chairman, Mandarus Global Ventures. A quick look at our panelists. I now hand this discussion over to our moderator, Naushad Panjwani. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today, and I look forward to a very engaging and enlightening discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Falguni.
Thank you, Falguni. And a good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
A warm welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A warm welcome to the Construction World's seminar on tall buildings in India, scaling new heights, redefining realities. As a professional who has spent decades analyzing market dynamics and the financial levers of a built environment, I can confidently say that tall buildings in India are more than just an architectural statement. They are an economic necessity driven by rapid urbanization and premium land values. Today, we are at a critical juncture. We are not just building taller, we are building more complex structures under immense pressure from tighter regulatory timelines, thanks to RERA, increasing demand for sustainability, ESG compliance, and the persistent challenge of execution quality. The conversation must move beyond the why and focus squarely on the how. We are assembled here with a stellar panel representing the full project life cycle, from vision and design integrity to flawless execution and sustainable performance. We'll start by challenging our architects on regulatory ambiguity and how they maintain design vision. We will then move swiftly to the site where our PMC and technology experts will discuss the roadblocks, logistics, innovations required to deliver these superstructures on time and budget. And finally, we will address the operational reality with our sustainability and urban experts, ensuring these vertical enclaves integrate seamlessly and sustainably into our struggling city infrastructure. We are not here for textbook answers, and our experts will give their candid insights, if possible, with quantifiable data and a policy forward discussion worthy of the CTBUH context. Let's begin this insightful session. Are all my panelists ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Let's begin with Mr. Londhe.
Yes, hi.
In India, hi. In India, the code interpretations often vary not just by state but by individual approval authorities. How do you protect design intent while navigating inconsistent regulatory interpretations, delays, approvals, and evolving norms, especially for super structures?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for inviting me for this. But see, what is happening is that when we first started doing the tall buildings in India, where in fact the Imperial which was built was first of a kind in India. And that time, really speaking, there were no norms as such. And over the time, it has happened, and there were a lot of learnings and things like that. And we have matured and educated now in doing tall buildings, and that's the way it has moved forward quite good. The point is, there is there is no specific rules or codes as of now, and and it is difficult to say that how we do it, but it basically we have to keep the flexibility. What is happening is that whether it's the government agencies or anywhere or multiple committees which are formed, what is happening is that we have to keep flexibility in the design and keep moving. Though it's a very contradictory to what a tall building should be, but really speaking, we still have to keep the flexibility in the design and keep moving ahead. And that's the only way what we can do it. What I would here the real aspect would be that we have to have a separate code or a separate kind of a regulation only for tall buildings, and that particular thing doesn't apply only for metro cities but across India, because today India is a very growing country. Even the tier 1 tier 2 cities are growing, and then there I feel that a separate code has to be there, and that's the only way we can really make super tall and great buildings. Also, the regulations, what I feel, have to be such a way that they have to be conducive to a tall building, not the regular kind of buildings what we do for any other project. And like for redevelopment, there would be certain different aspects. What is happening today is that if one rule book applies everywhere, and
Yeah.
that doesn't help in case of a tall building. And that's where we should really, as people who have been working in this tall building industry, come together, make a committee, set the rules, and then do it. Beyond that, it will be very difficult to control the way it is. The present laws really are not so helpful, but yes, we still are able to manage, because in India we all work under Jugaad, and it's funny to say, but for a tall but like professional, when we say it's funny to say all these things, but it is really true. And it's really difficult to work, but still there is always a way out. And that's the way what we have been doing all this time. Also, the multiple committees, like when we have across India, we have across Maharashtra or some state, they have one rule book. Similarly, same thing should happen state to state, or then we should have one rule, not multiple committees, so the contradiction doesn't happen. And most of the time, this contradiction hampers, the construction of a tall building, and that's not good. Construction of a tall building is very complex. Once it starts right from the drawing board till it hits the site and the execution until it gets completed, you cannot have some hurdles and change of regulations and things like that. And that's the reason why that we should have a proper control, a proper rule book, a separate set of laws, and that's the only way forward to make a successful tall building. And really, I wish that with this thing we can have a proper regulation in place, and then we can see much more taller buildings and compete with the global market. Right now we are very far behind what's happening globally in terms of tall buildings. Though we call tall and super tall, we are nowhere closer to super tall buildings. We are still in the just touching the tall building, the range. It's like that. So I think these regulations will help and give flexibility for everyone to start doing bigger and more iconic buildings.
True. So regulations is one part which I completely agree with you. But India's cost, material, labor ecosystems differ drastically from the markets where most global tall buildings, the ideas originate. Can you share a specific example where you Indianize an international concept successfully or unsuccessfully, and what it taught you?
No, in India, actually, the technology is available. It's only that it's not being implemented. That's the thing. There's no specific material or anything. Initially, what we are doing is kind of shuttering material or things were not available. So that was where we customized certain things, and now aluminum material, all shuttering, everything is available. So really speaking, there is no cut and paste kind of a situation what has happened anywhere. It's growing, and and we are getting all the technology into India, and it's very much possible. So I don't see a possibility where something is not happened successfully, or we try to mitigate certain things to achieve certain things. Yes, there were initially the learnings in terms of making a perfectly straight building in terms of line and level, de-shuttering, then how the tower crane would be dismantled and once it reaches. So those things were there, but now I don't think at that point of time. I'm just giving an example of Imperial right now because that was the first one here. Now over the last decade or something, there are a lot of buildings which have come up, but during that time, all these learnings were there, and we had to mitigate that, and that's how it is. But really speaking, there is no problem as such. The only thing is regulation, which I said earlier. That is the only main thing, and that's how we should do it.
Okay, so yeah, so let's bring our urban planner in now. So Momin, if I may request you to, come in. Indian developers often design on the assumption of future FSI increases because it's a dynamic situation on the regulatory front. Should planning authorities implement multi-cycle master plans, let's say 10-year, 20-year, to reduce speculation and bring predictability to vertical development? What's your view?
Yeah, I think firstly, thank you for having me on the panel. I think tall buildings and good city planning are really important aspects. They do go hand in hand if dealt properly. One of the biggest challenges that our cities currently face is urban sprawl. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll just like to explain what that means.
Sure, sure.
Essentially, the best part of infrastructure in any city can be concentrated in a small area. However, when the city expands, we are trying to push all sorts of infrastructure into much farther away lands, which is pushing people outside. And then what happens is that imagine the amount of water supply to the city of Mumbai remains the same. It's the 7 lakes that we have. But now instead of majority of that water being pumped to a smaller area of MMR, we are actually pumping it to much larger, much spread out areas. That puts a lot of pressure on building infrastructure and just something that is causing a lot of delays, a lot of flooding, we are not prepared, our transit doesn't reach there. So that it's tied to each other. What is tied to each other are two things. One is if we can design our cities to be built densely in smaller areas, but well designed so that they work very well, the best piece of infrastructure comes there. And super tall buildings come in picture over there. We need to understand tall buildings in density, not in terms of FSI or FAR. Essentially, if you're keeping the FAR small and building tall, it's the same thing. You're not increasing density. What we need to do for our cities to work really well is design our transit corridors in areas, design our water supply, sewage, our infrastructure networks in concentrated areas where we can plan and think for 50 years, 100 years resiliency in terms of infrastructure. So when we do that, the planning authorities can designate areas saying that this is where I'm going to provide infrastructure for the next 50 years if FSI increases, and the market will take its own time. Suppose the government can plan, but the market will take its own time and say that today I'm going to be at 70 floors. 10 years down the line, I might hit 150 floors because the technology changed, something changed. The city should be ready. But we can't make each and every area of our of Maharashtra be ready for this. This is intense infrastructure. We can't be just spreading this expensive infrastructure everywhere, imagining that everywhere the tall buildings will come. So that is something that we need to, as planners, as good city planners, we need to make sure that we design our cities to be dense, in dense, walkable, urban, livable, in areas that we can concentrate. Now, Mumbai enjoys this geography. We are restricted by water, so we can have 2, 3 transit lines and now metro lines. So we are accessible. We have the best supply of infrastructure in these areas. And we can develop this densely. But the moment other cities like Gurgaon, Gurgaon and Bangalore are suffering with this challenge. The moment they try and increase the infrastructure capacity in the center, the city moves out. There is a third ring road that is planned. There is a fourth ring road that will be planned. There is a fifth ring road. So how does a planner or a city then sort of design a city around this challenge of, ever expanding city? And that is where the density and tall buildings come into picture. In India, the kind of challenges we face, the amount of population that we have, we need to think about density very carefully. We must make sure we make compact, walkable, easy to use, livable city places first, and then not allow this sprawl to happen. The moment this sprawl will happen, our infrastructure will lag. So that's what the developers are struggling currently with. They are going into places that the city was never meant to be in that place. And then they're expecting a lot of infrastructure to reach, but it takes a while to reach there. And also it is happening in a haphazard manner where the market is dictating a lot of things without a lot of planning coming upfront. I hope that answers your question. If you want, I can elaborate a little more.
Yeah, so I think we get the gist of what you're saying. We'll come back on that a little while, but what you say makes perfect sense. Giving a live example, for example, I'm working on a land project for redevelopment in Kalyan, some 25 acres kind of development. And the FSI over there is 4, right? So the moment the landowner realizes the FSI is 4, there's excitement, in everything, and the problems are solved and so on. But when I go to the developers, okay, that is where there are the mature lot of developers now with a lot of changes coming and corporatization happening. And they say that, 4 FSI, meaning you'll have to go 50 floor plus. And in a place like Kalyan, which hardly had 12 stories till some time back, suddenly to jump into this, it's not the planning, it's not the technology, it's not the execution. That all can be managed, but whether the place can take such a structure, so that's you're right on that aspect, that crawling, will not really help the situation. So thanks for that. Let's get to Mr. Punch and the PMC issues which are there. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah. So what project delivery challenges remain the biggest roadblocks in executing tall buildings in India, and how can global best practices help address them?
So,
Thank you for having me here. And we inherit the best of architects' design. So let's put it that way.
Right.
And it becomes our responsibility to work closely with the contractors and the client and the other stakeholders to make it happen. So Turner, fortunately, has been a leader in tall buildings, and we have constructed or managed several tall buildings, or we call it mega tall buildings globally, including Burj and Merdeka and Taipa 101 and things like that. We're currently working on a large project for Birla Estates. It's 270-meter tall in Mumbai. The first challenge, I'll just tell you, if we have a good design and we have good drawings, and I might probably sound very familiar to most of them in the industry, but we need to have proper coordinated drawings right from day one. I think that's the first challenge that we have. And the reason being is most of the tall buildings or what you call iconic projects, they have an overseas architect and they have a local architect. You know, if it happens to be that combination, or even if it is not that combination, I'm just telling you, getting good coordinated drawings properly done, could be using BIM, it could be even without that, but properly super coordinated. That's very important. Construction is fast track in India and probably many parts of the world. What I mean by fast track is design, construction, and so many other things happen in parallel. So if you can release the early packages, which is the, excuse me, diaphragm wall, excavation, and get to it and move, and we are able to get the core going up. The key thing in tall buildings is getting the core up as quick as possible. You get the core up, you get the floor slabs up. You get the floor slabs up, you get the MEP stubs, you get all those curtain wall, you get everything in. So this is the sequence that typically it follows. So anything to facilitate that core wall that can be taken up. And there's a lot of technology advancements that has happened in the core wall. We have jump form. It climbs at least 5 floors, 6 floors, and then the floors we're catching up. So if you are able to make that, I think that design coordination and making sure that we have everything ready for construction in a very timely manner and properly vetted by the contractor. I think PMCs do their job, but I want contractors also to review it rather than coming with the late RFIs. So that's one. And the second big challenge, there are many challenges, but I just give top two. One is design and construction and coordination. Other is logistics and construction sequencing. So tall buildings, we are talking about buildings in the range of around 300 meters in India, 300, less than 300 or 320 meters, not more than that. Whereas in other countries, we go close to 600 and we are going above 600 also. So if you're able to get the course up, as I said before, get the cranes ready, and I keep advising many of our clients, please don't have tower cranes inside an elevator shaft. That happens in many of the cases in India, but I'm just telling you, you're better off having it outside. If you block 2 or 3 tower cranes in an elevator shaft, depending upon how the location is, those shafts don't really get done very quickly, So you can really get that done. And from logistics, what is very important is how do you really get the basement out? They all have basements, you all have deep foundations. The moment you get that basement out, that's probably the critical path on any program of a tall building. And then it gets into the superstructure, which is more or less after the first floor, it's a typical floor, and it keeps moving very fast. So by that time, you need to have the right kind of hoist to support it. You need to have the curtain walls happening, in tandem with the slab progress. So the vertical logistics plays a big role in tall building construction. So it'll be the jump lifts, ensuring you have the just-in-time deliveries, how to make it happen. It's all about cycle time, and many of us are familiar with that. What's the slab cycle time? How quickly can we turn that around?
Right.
So that's it. So if I think it can be simplified a lot, but if you get the basements out and you're up to the structure and then you keep moving, I think life gets much simpler. Of course, the challenge is different with respect to elevator consultant is there. We know
Correct.
it's having the verticality of the shafts and things like that. But when those are all, I think we have found out ways and means to do it. And the third biggest challenge, I think it's not just us, tall buildings, but everyone is shortage of skilled manpower. So we have that challenge in terms of shortage of skilled manpower, and that our construction is labor intensive. So
Right.
you cannot really beat that. So those are my top three things that comes to my mind when you talk about delivery related challenges.
Yeah, so very well said. I hear you, and I appreciate your emphasis on coordination. Having done my PMI myself, uh, I can tell you that this concept of PMBOK is not even heard of by so many of the side guys. They do not appreciate or they do not understand the concept of planning and communication, which is such an important aspect of a smooth, seamless execution of project. And somebody has rightly said that we do a lot of jugaad even at site. We leave things for the last minute. We hold information. We are not, proactive in communicating and explaining what is there. So that I appreciate that what challenges the site conditions are. But coming to innovations, in construction management, technology, procurement, safety, can significantly transform the way India delivers tall building. Can you give some examples and delight us with your experience?
So one of the innovation that we have is, I'll just tell you a simple way, is we have our tower cranes are fixed with certain robots, which we started to do in many of the jobs in the US. What it does is it measures the productivity of the picks. So to us, those crane lifts are extremely important. And when you do that, we want to bring it to India as well. If you teach the contractor how to improve the productivity, he not only makes money, we also get our job done faster. So I think our emphasis, the Turner's emphasis on the ongoing projects is we did some deep brainstorming as to how we can improve the productivity. And obviously innovation will play an important role. The second thing on innovation is artificial intelligence on scheduling. So we have started to test case on few projects through softwares, and how can we present various scenarios. The what if scenarios keep happening once a baseline is done, and if there are delays happening or if there are new issues that are coming up for whatever be the reasons, what does the new trend look like, and how can we really pull it back? So we are looking at that very seriously, and we need to make sure that it really works very well. The third thing where we can talk about, I wouldn't say it's innovation, I would call it as more as a best practices, is offsite fabrication. We need to get the rebar cages done outside. We need to have all the MEP and HVAC systems. We need to get as much as possible outside. We talk about bathroom pods, and we think that it should not be done, but we should really start looking at it. So offsite construction, we call it, and these are going to play a significant role. And in India, there's a lot of opportunity. You're able to do these things, push it up. It really, really makes a lot. And one suggestion I can probably give to consultants here, less than 300 meters, I've seen in few countries where they're going for a modular design, and how we can really make it. So that will really open out standardization and how simpler we can design. They still look very good. They look beautiful, good elevation and things like that. But I think those things will really, really help a lot in terms of really making it that way. So those are my thoughts, like something on prefabrication, get offsite construction, put something on the productivity, and then same thing on scheduling. How do we get it? The biggest challenge in India is the schedule. I'll just tell you. Everything else is a byproduct of it. You talk about quality, you talk about safety, you talk about cost, everything. It's just the schedule. You control the schedule in a very nice manner. And with some of these techniques that we are talking about, we'll do it. And one last thing is again a best practice. We call it as a last planner system. Few of you might know, many might not. When we did the Statue of Unity project in Gujarat, after the dates were set by Honorable Prime Minister. So we had about 120 days to work with L&T to make it happen. And what we had was, when we say the last planner, the last important person in the entire planning system who has to be engaged is the foreman. And we had him on the job site and we had him in the meeting room. Not like us who are in suit boot, but more importantly, we got them and we said, ये हमें 10 दिन में करना है. Can you tell me what are the challenges? वो बोलते सर मेरे पास ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, वो नहीं है, वो नहीं है. That ये नहीं है, वो नहीं है, those information you are not going to get it from a project manager or probably a senior guy. So I would like to clearly emphasize that working in India, as they say, the Jugaad concept, this is one of the Jugaad in a very nice way to ensure that, that bottom up is happening. That bottom up really helped. It really, really helped. So we could connect with the foreman and the workmen. And then when we go there, they really kind of connect with us and really out of the box thinking came out. So those are some of the few thoughts that we can do.
Very interesting. You mentioned offsite construction or fabrication. But what not many people know is the infrastructure, the roadways, the rails, and we hardly have any waterway transport despite having so many water bodies. Is that they're not designed for heavy equipment or large equipment? An experience from a client into moving of material is that the roads are not wide enough. They are not strong enough to take the load of the trucks. There are not enough trucks of those kind, so 100-wheelers and what have you. As well as the rails, for example, the height of overhead cables and the tunnels is not designed to take some of the large material which is there. So there's a lot to be done offside of the logistics part. And I'm sure once that is done, then a lot of these challenges will automatically be taken care of. Let's bring Mr. Uchil in. Are you there? Yeah.
Yes,
Hi.
I'm there. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. So yeah, when I say you're there, I can see you there, but I'm just asking so that you put on your mic and
Mic is on, sir.
begin.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
that's the only reason. So in tall buildings, MEP services, especially fire protection, HVAC, are intricately layered. What is the most significant coordination clash or risk you encounter between the structural system and the MEP pathways in Indian high-rises, and what BIM design practice is necessary to eliminate it at the drawing board stage itself?
Right. So just before I get to that question, I think we have a pretty large live audience, and it would be contextually great to just define what is a tall building, because CTBUH has that norm. And since I'm representing CTBUH, I thought it would be useful to give an idea.
Sure.
So up to 300 meter tall is considered as a tall building. 300 meters gives you 80 to 100 habitable floors approximately. Super tall is 300 to 600 and mega tall is 600 and above. For India, at least at this point of time, contextually, we are looking at near about between 250 and 300, 320 meter as the the tall buildings that we are talking about. So that should give an idea of where we are, because till today we've been looking at 40, 50, 60 story buildings. Now we are talking about 80 to 100 stories. Coming to the point of MEP, the challenges are always that the vertical shafts that are available that go through and through, where all our MEP risers, be it electrical, plumbing, fire, and HVAC, their sizes are extremely restricted due to FSI issues, where you can't increase the depth of a shaft beyond a certain point. So it becomes critical to integrate all these services into a BIM model right ahead of time to ensure that there is no clash when you go to site. Because once you have built, then to go and make core cuts in beams for pipes to pass through or for a sprinkler pipe to go through, that becomes very, very difficult. And within the BIM, I mean, it's easy to say let's do a BIM model, but to make that BIM model successful, it is very important to have an overall system of monitoring of that BIM, like BIM 360, or there are 2 or 3 other platforms where there is one moderator who's actually taking all the BIM activities from the various stakeholders, be it structure, be it architect, be it MEP, and all other stakeholders to ensure that it's not just the BIM model which is developed, but also that the model which is developed is implementable properly at site. So these are the challenges that we're facing. It's taking a long time to implement BIM in India for whatever reason, but we feel that uh, without BIM in these buildings, we're making 80 to 100 habitable floors from safety, from construction, all these perspectives. Uh, it would be very, very difficult to, continue and do a successful building.
Right.
Right.
And thank you for that. And also, thank you for pointing out how we live in the world of assumption. We assume that everybody attending, we would know what a tall building is, but that definitely is not true. And thanks for, defining what the tall structures are all about. Let's go to technology. Let's bring Mr. Ramu in. Mr. Ramu?
Yeah, hi, Naushad.
Yeah, hi. So, let's talk about the technology adoption gap that we see. The use of LiDAR, 3D laser scanning, BIM is vital for the execution of super talls. Where do you see the biggest gap in the adoption of advanced measurement, digital twin technologies on high rise sites, and how can that be overcome?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Before I come to this particular question, can I just cover the basics of what VT would be for the benefit of all the audience over here?
Please.
So, from a VT point of view, if you want us to put it in one simple sentence, we need to have the most optimal number of elevators, optimal capacity, optimal speed for that project, be it a mid-rise project, be a high-rise project. That's the basic mantra. Now, how do we get to that? The series of ways we can do that, where we study the VT concern, studies the product, studies the project, studies the traffic patterns of the occupants of the project, be it commercial or residential. When we talk about high-rise project or a super tall project, there are different challenges in that. What happens is traditionally when I go to a developer or to an architect and design the project, we actually end up coming a bit late in the entire process. We are left with hardly much space to kind of maneuver over there. My study, if it warrants X number of elevators or speed capacity, the promoter, the developer, the architect is not able to give that many number of elevators. That is a challenge. The challenge, as I see, is two ends. One is from a developer point of view and from the other stakeholders. The developer is not really willing to give the most optimal number of elevator shafts, elevator cabins for a typical project, be it high-rise or mid-rise, which actually impacts the design efficiency, the VT efficiency. That's one challenge over there. The second one would be number of service elevators. As we grow taller and taller, now there's a norm that says that we need to have one fire evacuation elevator and a service elevator at minimum. I think we need to change our mindset to go to a larger number of service elevators also, because based on the studies we see, the movement of amenities in terms of servants, maids, drivers, far more outnumbers the actual population of a building, certain type of building. So that needs to be given some thought. Traditionally, what happens is when we speak to a developer or to the procurement team, they focus the entire discussion on aesthetics and stuff like that without delving into design parameters. Some attention needs to be given over there. Coming to what LiDAR subject we mentioned, that's a very welcome point that's happening in the industry. We are seeing enough and more projects wherein they're using BIM modular. Now, as Mr. Panch also mentioned, BIM gives us a proper vision in advance of the possible clashes in the project. Very helpful. It also helps us because a lot of our projects are asking for Revit modeling, BIM modeling, building information systems to be integrated in the main model. We get to see any kind of projection that comes into the shaft, which otherwise would not have been possible to kind of identify at the initial stage. This helps us. In fact, I would go one step ahead. Instead of 3D BIM, we can go to 4D, which also helps in scheduling the project progress. It can help us monitor the entire project progress. If I go one step ahead to 5D, It can also help me to the overall costing of the entire project, right from the BOQ stage. So these are some of the points that we had. It is also helping us get the right kind of a shaft orientation, shaft stability, which helps us install the elevator on a later date.
Yeah. Right. So very interesting that you mentioned this, and I think that's where we have the challenges, and we need to see how we can move and overcome these challenges. Let me now move to the sustainability and operational realities. Let's bring Mr. Kothari into the conversation. Hi.
Hello, hi. Hi, Naushad.
Yeah, hi. Just to sort of give a lighter note and in continuation of what Mr. Ramu just said, few decades back there was this Rajiv Gandhi slum scheme which was there at Dharavi, and you had, I don't think, very tall building. I think there was 7 or 10-story buildings. Those are the first, you saw those slum buildings come up, and what one heard of was you gave them fancy building, relatively, comparatively fancy building, and when it came to operation, it was so bad that the elevator shaft was used as dumping garbage, right? So people would clean their house, collect all the garbage, and just throw it down the chute. Who's going to go down to the dumping yard or wherever the collection point is? And in some time, you had 4, 5, 6 floors of garbage over the lift was not used. So operations and maintenance is such an important aspect of it. A lot of high-rises get green ratings, but run inefficiently due to poor operations and maintenance. So a thought, should India move from construction-related certification to performance-based rating instead of design-based certification? If yes, how do you see that transition happening?
I mean, I agree with you, Naushad. This is a real big issue that we no doubt have good design, we have good certifications, we have good ratings, green buildings, but when it comes to performance, it falls short of what we have designed. Just for your information, the green building rating system that are there are 2 types of rating systems. One is for new construction, and the whole focus in the new construction is basically on simulations which mimics performance and then helps you to take design decisions. And as far as the certification programs that are there for existing operational buildings, they are all about auditing, benchmarking, and retro commissioning. So performance-based rating systems already exist in India, but the popularity which is there in India on the sustainability, on the green building, is much more towards new buildings rather than operational buildings. Let me give you some other data. Today, if you look at the number of green buildings that are being certified in India, out of, say, 1,000 green buildings that are being certified every year, more number of them, maybe it's around 8,000, 9,000 buildings that are getting into certification every year. The percentage of existing operational building that gets certified is just barely about 10% of that.
My God.
So there is a big difference. But however, the ground reality is completely different. For every 1 new building that we make, there are 10 existing buildings that are in operation, which we need to take care of. And more important, whatever buildings that we are making, how do they transition into efficient operations is again another big question mark. So why have the new buildings really caught on the green mantra, but not the existing buildings, is for a number of reasons. There are government incentives, there are ESG related funding available, there is SLL, sustainability linked loans. So all of them has given a good impetus to the new buildings to go sustainable and to go green. But in the process, the existing buildings have been completely left out. So there is a thought that is going on in the sustainable community that we should work out ways and means of how to incentivize existing operational buildings to become high performing, to become more efficient, and there should be some linkage with the government tax incentives, etc., which is happening abroad. If you go to Europe, you go to America, North America, if you are having a building which is running efficiently, you get a tax break on that. You get a better tax benefit on that, and even the insurance and the valuation of that building also differs based on the performance of the building. So we have got to move towards in that direction. The rating systems are available, but there are no takers for that.
Right. So this is very interesting. I think this is something which, for me, this is a great takeaway that, there is incentive that can. I was wondering what incentive can be done, because once the developer builds and moves out, he really has no control on the development. But the residents who decide, they typically, how we've seen in every building, when in the construction phase till the society is formed, after the OC comes, the developer who's maintaining, and since it's a ongoing marketing site, till then the upkeep is really great. But the moment society takes over, they start cutting costs, and they because now they have to contribute to that. So I was wondering what incentive can be given, but you have very nicely pointed out international examples which can be very well implemented in India, subject to government's will to let go of certain taxes if a building is maintained sustainably, which is a very good takeaway for me. But on that note, I was also thinking that the statistics that you gave, 8,000-9,000 buildings already certified. That's quite a small number, isn't it, as compared to what is there? And it's in the interest of the world, humanity, that more and more buildings follow ethical and sustainable ways of constructing. Can we look at what more can be done to incentivize people, which is not necessarily government tax based? Financial models, OPEX offsets, green financing, ESG linked debt. Can we think of something which, just from nice to have or a marketing tagline, it then becomes a sustainable board level decision? Can we sort of have your views on it, Mr. Kothari?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, yes, what you're saying is right, but unfortunately, I mean, I have been a part of this entire green building movement right from.
Sorry, your voice is gone. Sorry, your network seems to be. Hello, Mr. Kothari?
20 years, and I have been following the. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah. So I've been a part of this green movement for the last 20 years, and I've seen how it has developed over the last years. It's really challenging because we live in an environment where the developers have to have a level playing field for them to really do something different. Now, if you look at how this entire green business is spread into India, and one of the most important drivers of that today for the green and the sustainable building movement is the government incentive of increasing FSI for a green certified building.
Right.
Today, in fact, there are 15 states in India which offer anywhere between 5 to 15% increase in FSI for a certified green building. Now, what does this do is, it is unlocking a good amount of capital for the developers to invest heartily in sustainability, without looking back, because they are getting some money out of that. And besides that, there are multiple other benefits that people get. For instance, one of the key benefits that people use is a fast track environment clearance for projects which are pre-certified.
Right.
So this is what is happening. But if you say just by saying that a green building or a sustainable building is better performing. It is saving some energy. It is saving some water. It is making sure that the comfort level inside is better. To communicate all this and convert it to business reality is very challenging.
Right.
So unless and until the government doesn't intervene and makes this entire sustainability movement happen and support it,
Right.
it's really difficult.
Is this a global phenomenon or is it typical to India?
See, in most of the advanced countries, like if you take Europe or the US, the laws and the bylaws and the codes, etc., they have all these built in already into the whole system.
Right.
Whereas in India, you know, it is in a little different direction.
Right.
We are, you know, as Mr. Londhe mentioned, that we are even struggling to get the norms to make a tall building. Leave
Right.
aside, give some benefit to make a high efficient or high performing building. So I think we are catching up, but we have a long way to go.
Right. Thanks for that. Let's end this by asking a question on the design execution disconnect that we see. So let me bring Mr. Londhe in again. So my impression is that high-rise failures in India often emerge not from design, but from value engineering during execution. What safeguards or contractual mechanisms should architects insist on to prevent the dilution of design intent on site?
Value engineering in the sense that what is happening, like earlier also it was being mentioned, all the designs, all the coordination, everything has to be in place, right? For a tall building, you cannot keep on revising, or because we've seen a lot of, I don't blame the developers but it's like the market scenario changes, and the lifespan of a construction of a tall building is long. And
Yeah.
they have to adopt themselves or adapt themselves to that kind of a scenario, and then they ask to do the revisions and things like that. So this value engineering is important, but at the same time, we should also ensure that there's no revisions happening. All coordination is done day one. And once you start hit the construction, then there's no looking back. Then you build whatever it is and go ahead, and then let's look at other ways how we can mitigate those challenges which are coming up because of the changing market scenarios. And that's the where I feel we can really make an efficient, cost-effective tall building. So in terms, once you're on the drawing board and you start looking at the cost, things like that, I think this value engineering in terms of MEP, in terms of structure, there's so many means and ways. Even with the way you design a tall building, it's not a regular, the shape of the shape of a tall building also makes a very big aspect. That also helps in the overall, that value engineering starts from that place. And further to
Right.
that, then there are other aspects what go into in terms of MEP and services. So
Correct.
there are things available, but it's only which has to be implemented at the right point of design. The two other aspects which I feel that which is also important is which in the earlier point which you were mentioning. So one is this fire kind of an aspect. In the entire discussion, nobody mentioned about this fire. And in a tall building, this fire aspect is very, very important. And
Right.
we had seen earlier also that a lot of this fire check floor and these kind of regulations were introduced, which is to me were not at all successful, and they are not right, because the way to tend to a fire is not by just introducing a blank floor, which doesn't help in any
Yeah.
way, but there are other ways of, like what you're saying, and engineering ways and other ways how you can tackle, because a fireman cannot reach up to the top of the building in case of an emergency or a god forbid fire. And
Right.
just making wider fire driveways and things like that, that is not the way. There has to be an engineering and a mechanism where the building itself runs into a system on its own to tackle the fire and help people evacuate. And
Right.
that's the way it has to be. And
Yeah.
that's what, and even this facade cleaning also is one more aspect which
Yeah.
nobody's talked about, and or a tall building, that's a very, very important aspect. And while you
Right.
make the design and when you do it, So that's where all that has to be implemented, thought about. Otherwise, later on, it becomes quite challenging to handle it.
You are absolutely right. And the times that we are living in the last 25 years, particularly where the pace of innovation and obsolescence has gone up drastically, I think somewhere we all will have to be cognizant of being agile, such that, as you rightly said, these construction cycle could be anywhere between 5 to 10 years. Uh, any technological upgrade or obsolescence, we'll have to see how we can bring into this thing. So I think that's a takeaway. We'll have to all do that. Falguni, do we have time to move to the last session?
We have about 3 minutes, Naushad.
Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the last session on the integration challenge and move to a free-flowing kind of thing. Rather than ask questions, have the panelists give their final take on this. So some kind of a wild card question which I have: single policy reform. Which is the one reform, planning, regulatory, financial, technical, what immediately would accelerate or completely change the way India builds tall? It's a free for all. I would request you to be brief.
Yes, Mr. Uchil.
So one thing which would significantly help in terms of policy is to ensure that there is an independent commissioning authority or a commissioning agency that commissions the building once it is made before it is occupied. A fire auditor or an officer to sign off that the building is safe from a fire perspective, and a independent commissioning agency that comes in and oversees the commissioning of the all the MEP systems and every other aspect of the building before it is handed over and occupied. This is one lacune because we depend on the contractors who are executing the projects. So it's a bit of a conflict of interest because they will always hide any performance issues that might crop up. So a commissioning agency would be very, very useful.
Mr. Ramu?
Yeah. So adding to what other participants also mentioned, so in India we have a different kind of scenario. Various states have various licensing authorities. Okay, some states don't have them. The most stringent one in terms of licensing authorities are there in the West Bengal as a state. So I think as we grow taller, the complexities of a high-speed elevator increases manifold. We have separate guidelines, we have codes for them. But from a licensing authority point of view, if you have some kind of a uniformity across the country, which is being discussed right now at the state government, at the central government level, that will help us get more clarity on the entire system.
Thank you. Yeah, Naushad.
Sorry, I had got logged out. Falguni, I don't know who spoke, who didn't. So you want to continue the sequence.
All right. So Mr. Ramu spoke on,
Right.
getting, various states having various
Approvals and stuff like
approvals
that.
and various
Licensing
authorities and whether
authorities.
that could be standardized.
Right. Okay, next, who would like to go?
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so while we are saying that there has to be separate policy or some regulations for tall buildings across India for different cities, I would also say that when these committees are formed who are going to review all these tall buildings and this thing, the committee members should not be just administrative people or somewhere from the government, some IS officers. There has to be people from the industry, technical professional people who have actually been in the journey of building tall buildings, because they themselves
Well said.
understand what the challenges are and why a certain regulation or certain way of designing or certain way of engineering is mandatory, rather than just going by the regular rule book and saying that this is mandatory and you have to just go ahead with that. For tall buildings, certain things change drastically and they have to be implemented, which are necessary for doing a tall building. And that's where I think the
Right.
committee members selection and that committee is very, very important, how and what kind of
Excellent.
people we
Excellent
have
point.
there. So that's one important point which I thought I should make.
Yeah. Mr. Momin?
I think one of the aspects that we should also talk about is how does the tall building also contribute towards the city? Because I'm a city planner, I would like to talk about how does it come and interface with the city as well. A lot of times,
Can I come in?
because the FSIs are sort of fixed for a plot, if you want to go tall, you take away a lot of ground floor and the footprint reduces. But I think the responsibility of a tall building is also multiple. We should think about light ventilation of neighboring sort of properties also. If there are so many tall buildings that are casting so much shadow throughout the day and is devoid, and the neighboring plots are devoid of sunlight, something
Sunlight,
that must be sort of addressed. Two, the way the building comes down and interacts with the city is also very important. You can't have like this tower in a park with absolute no safety at the edges where people are walking at the edges. They need to be a little more comfortable. So that is a step that we need to take as we urbanize and get more sort of, because there needs to be eyes on street to make sure people are protected and feel safe when they're using the sidewalk. If you have large compound walls and just no one to take care of people outside, that becomes a bit of a challenge. So there is a attitude change that needs to happen in city building in general. So those
right.
things are something that, and I also really sort of want to resonate with Mr. Londhe is recently we learned that the way our city sort of policies are put in place, the setbacks and the fire tender norms are put in place are really regressive because we don't have the fire tender machinery that is able to cater to this. So because we don't have that fire truck, we are designing the entire city or over designing the entire city, leaving so much wastage in planning that most of our cities are inefficient because we don't have that one equipment. So we are handling this situation completely reversely. We should have invested in innovation and technology and getting the best firefighting systems. Instead, we are making our cities really inefficient by making massive spaces that are absolute waste. So that I think is a very important point. It has a massive scale impact on large scale impact, which could have been so much more efficient. So we need to leapfrog and invest big time on firefighting technology.
Yeah, it's now globally, drones and helicopters are used for firefighting. We're still talking about trucks and stuff there. It's really archaic in our approach. You're right. Also, you mentioned about sunlight, but the SRA buildings, which are not really very tall, are built so dense that there's an air circulation problem, which is something nobody calculated.
Absolutely. And that we are
it's
not
unhealthy. Yeah.
Correct. And we're not even talking about these discussions where
Design flaws.
we have a right, other neighbors also have a right to light and ventilation.
Absolutely.
Needs to be studied.
Absolutely. Mr. Kothari.
I just wanted to bring in one aspect which you mentioned about performance and later on during the operational phase, what happens. Most of our codes, we were talking about building a separate codes and standards for tall buildings. They should have some element of performance also built inside. It should not be just compliance and just rules. It should have some element of performance. It should mimic, simulate performance at the design stage, and that performance has to be again validated during the commissioning and the operational stage. That pathway is extremely important. That's it.
Perfect. Sorry, did I miss out anybody? Okay. So Falguni,
Yes.
the boss lady, I hand it back to you to summarize what we discussed and tell us how the panel performed.
The panel performed A+, but this discussion is so wide and so deep. I think we could have had, like you mentioned earlier, each one of them could have spoken for an hour and we would still have fallen short. Some of the points I think that have come up, pointedly, for example, if I take from what Jairam said, scheduling is actually the most important thing. If you can stick to the schedule, and if you do a bottom-up approach where you find out the operational efficiencies and deficiencies in the beginning, it's one of the good practices to follow. Juzer has spoken about having a performance management government SOP being given to buildings which operate well. Jairam has spoken of shortage of skilled manpower being an issue. I think that resonates across the industry, across the nation. So that is another refrain. We have 8,000 to 9,000 buildings being certified every year. But like Juzer said, we need the operational certification is just 10%. Mr. Londhe spoke of Jugaad and the fact that the tall buildings, although we must be pre-scheduled, a lot of it happens on the go. There has been talk about one law, one operational efficiency, and one authority to certify. Mr. Ramu spoke of the tech adoption gap, and one important point we mentioned was the number of service elevators in a building. In a country that adopts a lot of manpower to run their homes, it could be something that is missed as of now. I think this panel has been amazing, but we could have got so many more insights, so many more if we were, if we could do multiple hours, and we could have had more stakeholders into the discussion. To cover this and more, we are doing a story on tall buildings, which will be, the discussion will be a sequel to the story that we will do. So we will take insights from everything that we've taken today, add it to the story, and it will be a part of the Construction World issue December edition, which will be circulated at CTBUH. Moreover, this discussion will be on our YouTube channel. We will share the link, and you can share the link with your stakeholders as well. I want to thank Naushad for his wonderful moderation, for keeping the panel together, for keeping the discussion so lively and so engaging. Thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists.